is I'll call the meeting to order for the September 21st meeting for the FinCom. And what I'm doing is just going to look down the roll call. Just Bill?
Yep.
Zach?
Yes.
Rick? Amy?
Here.
Mike Fiore?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Paula?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
And Bonnie?
I am here.
Excellent. All right, just a couple of, I'll start off just quick. I know Mike sent out a tentative schedule. Just for everybody to know, I think what we'll do is we'll meet for the next 2 weeks. We'll go based on Mike's schedule, which 9:21, 9:23, 9:28, 9:30, 10:05, and then we'll keep open in case we need it 10:07 and 10:12. Okay. We'll at least go on that schedule. So what I would ask for anybody, just either let myself or Amy know if you cannot make a meeting so we can judge accordingly. We're not running into a quorum issue, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, that's a question.
Go ahead.
I think I responded to that thread, but the 12th is actually the holiday, so we wouldn't meet that day, right?
Right. We wouldn't meet on the holiday, no.
Okay, so should we keep the 14th open, or is that too close to the date?
I think it's close, but Mike, what do you think?
You could keep it open and let's hope you don't need to meet on that day.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I am really, and I don't want to have any kind of issues on the day of. I don't want to have any kind of last minute meetings unless there's something. And to me, the only really thing that fits something is a union negotiation at this point. The other thing, just to give a heads up too, is I know the select board is working, so they're going to extend the special town meeting, so it will be held at the same time as the fall town meeting on the 17th. All right, so they're going to take care of the steps needed there to have the continuance.
Hey there, tell me black is my favorite color. They say black is a
Can somebody mute? Thank you. The other thing, I talked to Dr. Bayetta, and he's going to work on the schedule, so the management reports for 6:30, and then I believe it's going to be September 30. He'll get those reports for us along with the revolving account balance. And I know Mike Units did forward me the debt schedule. I would forward that either tonight after our meeting or tomorrow. I apologize, I just haven't had a chance to get to that. I don't know if anyone has any questions on what we just discussed, but if not, I'll turn it over to Mike Units and we can start with our agenda. It looks pretty heavy right now.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the main thing tonight is the articles pertaining to the Town Hall and Senior Center building project. The first thing I wanted to mention is that the selectmen have asked that the two articles for the purchase of the land be combined to one. So that's one article. And I'd like to start, if we could, Diana O'Brien, the chairwoman of the building committee, is on tonight, and she can just talk about the process and how they chose these two parcels.
Diana, thank you very much. I know you and your committee have put in a lot of time.
Yes, we have, and we're very glad to be at this point, to be honest with you. It's kind of a relief. As you know, for a couple of years, we've been trying to put this together. And back pre-COVID, believe it or not, on the in late January, the building committee combed through 17 sites that had been identified by the architectural firm of DBBW. We had set parameters for a site or sites within a mile and a half maximum of the center of town, so that everything stays kind of compact within Norton. That would be buildable and could hold either one or both of the buildings. We had a very long meeting that evening and narrowed the sites down to 4, which we then forwarded to the select board in February. And they were working very hard on it. And then, as you know, everything came to a screeching halt with, this COVID and everything. So we were able to kind of muddle through, and at their meeting in July, they did, talk about the 4 sites that we had recommended. And on August 6th, they held a public forum via Zoom that was attended very well by about between 30 and 40 people to narrow down and get some public feedback. After that meeting, they did narrow it down to 2 sites that they were interested in pursuing. The first one is, and I want to get the address correct, it is at 116 120 Mansfield Avenue, right across from Freight's, I'm sorry, from the Chinese restaurant. I just dated myself. Where the woodworking shop is and the older home. They've identified that as a good site for the Council on Aging. The parcel will hold the Council on Aging, and it also will provide passive recreation so that they can continue working with the Recreation Department for fun things, water activities, hiking and things. So that was identified as the site for the Council on Aging. And then the select board identified the Clemmy property, which is between the current town hall and the police station, as the preferable site for constructing a new town hall. So that was our process. As I said, we narrowed it down from 17 down to 2. I was really pleased with how it went. We had some great feedback from residents of the community as to their preference as to where these buildings should go. I feel we've done a good job of listening, and we are now at the point of purchase. So I will ask if you have any questions on that. If not, we can go back to Mr. Yernitz.
Does any of the committee members have a question for Dinah at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask a question.
Please.
Thanks for coming tonight, Dinah. We appreciate it.
No worries. Excuse me. Fall allergies if I sound awful.
I can sympathize. Question from looking at the articles last week when we met, it looks like the request is to raise and appropriate the funds that we don't already have to purchase the land as the first step in the process before we get to the debt exclusion piece that will be for the funding of the building itself, like the building project. So I guess the question I have is just trying to understand a little bit of the thought process behind that and why we're doing them separately instead of packaging it all up together.
Well, we need to know that. I think it's a great question. I mean, thank you for asking it. We do need to know where these buildings are going to go in order to proceed farther with a more detailed feasibility study that we then can take to town meeting to precede construction.
Okay.
In order to do that, we need to have a place to put them. And right now, the 2 parcels that have been identified are private property.
Okay.
So we felt it was best at this point in time to strategically purchase those sites for the town, so that we did not expend any more time and energy developing municipal buildings on private property and then be told at the 11th hour in March, for example, that the landowners had received an offer for their property and sold it. So it does seem a little long between the processes for October down to April or May. That is the animal that we have as municipal government, going from town meeting to town meeting. But it was thought out that it would be best for us to proceed to design these buildings on municipal property as opposed to private property.
Mr. Chairman?
Go.
I have a question about when we purchase the land. I don't know if it is or if it can even be done on a contingent basis if the projects are approved, because if we purchase the land and the projects don't get approved, then we have two parcels of land that will go unused. So what's the, how's that play out?
I believe, Michael, when the town manager is putting together a purchase and sale agreement for these two pieces of property, they can be contingent upon town meeting approval. And if that is agreeable between the property owner and the town, then that sets it up absolutely perfectly. As you know, in municipal government, nothing, you can vote to appropriate all you want until town meeting says no, and then you have to stop. That's kind of where we are. But it can be put in a purchase and sale so that if everything, which it will not, go south in the spring, then we're not purchasing the property.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mike?
and I just wanted to emphasize that if town meeting votes in October to purchase the two properties, it doesn't mean they're automatically purchased. That just gives the selectmen the authority to negotiate and purchase the properties. It doesn't mean if town meeting votes, it doesn't mean the selectmen have to move forward if they don't want to. One of the reasons we want to get these purchase and sales done now is that area on Mansfield Ave has become a hot area. I heard from the Silver family that they had an offer on their property, and also Wheaton has now had an offer for the property that we were looking at. So, if we wait and we may just lose out. So right now, looking at the properties, there's asking prices that we'll have to negotiate starting at, obviously. And the combined is $1,850,000 around that area. And so we had bond counsel prepare a schedule so you could see if the money's borrowed at $2 million, we rounded it up. At $2 million, the first year would cost the town $179,000, and then it would progress down so that the last year would be $103,000. And I also gave you a letter from Southeastern Regional. I know a lot of talk could be, well, the economy is in tough shape now. Is this a good time to be moving forward? And Southeastern Regional looked at that on their project, and they decided it was the time to move forward because interest rates are so low right now. And also, due to the economy, there's questions, with contractors, once they finish the private work they have now, is there going to be a lot of private work out there for them in the future? And it seems like there isn't going to be, so contractors will be bidding lower prices on the work. And Southeastern estimated that on their project, they saved $5 million by going forward now, rather than waiting.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Who was that? Who was that?
Zach,
Zach, go ahead.
I don't know if you, Dana, thank you for all the work you've done in the Board of Selectmen and everybody, but I don't know if you guys heard my comments from last week, but I will repeat them. I said, my concern is these projects are badly needed, not disputing that. I fully support them. I do have concerns about the process, though. Let's say it's the day after the election when these are given to the voters and it hasn't gone as planned. And the voters have rejected the $40 million or $30 million, whatever it is, expenditure. Where do we stand as a town? We stand that we've expended $2 million. We've borrowed some of it. We've taken some from McKinney. We now have two pieces of land that we're no longer collecting taxes on because they now have become municipal. And we still have two buildings. We still have a town hall and a senior center in disrepair. So with anybody here who was living in a house and the roof was leaking, the boiler was shot, and you had a few bucks in the bank, would you buy a piece of land without having financing in place in advance? That would just put the town in a worse situation than it is today. I know, Mike, you sent over, some estimates on repairing the town hall. Well, $2 million could be a good down payment on that. It's all well and good if the town approves it, but that's not a certain, and everybody knows how difficult that is in this environment. So I would like to see personally, as it stands, put it out there and say, you know what, the property next to the town hall has been for sale. I don't know, I've lived in town over 20 years. I think it's been for sale as long as, at least that long, probably, if not longer. That piece of property only has value to one person. It's the town of Norton. Nobody else is going to build a house there or put anything right there. I don't know, I can't speak for the other property on Mansfield Ave, but I just don't think it's thought, all works fine if the project is approved. If it's not, you now are in a worse situation than you are today. You're $2 million in the hole, or if you borrowed it, like you said, Mike, it's costing you $100-something thousand a year, and you got two pieces of property, and your both buildings are still in disrepair.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mike.
Just a few answers to those questions. I did give you an estimate around $8 million to renovate the town hall, and that did include hazardous waste abatement. And I also gave you the minutes from the selectmen's meeting where the building commissioner indicated that structurally the building cannot be renovated. So that option is not a sound option. And then the senior center, probably when we first started this 3 or 4 years ago, we explored the option of staying where we were. And as part of that, the building itself can't be renovated into anything. It's too small, it's too old. It would have to be torn down and would need more room. So the garage out back that the school department uses would have to go, and we'd have to rebuild the garage on the school property. And they received an estimate 3 or 4 years ago, almost $800,000 to build a new garage that size. So if we were gonna tear down the senior center, tear down the garage, and build a new garage for $800,000, we're talking over $1 million to get a site that we could do something on that still is a small site and not adequate. And then the short answer on the purchase of the land, there can be in the purchase and sale, as Diana said, that it's contingent if the sellers are willing to wait, that it's contingent upon approval by the town of the projects. And then the long-term answer, looking at the future, I remember at a building committee meeting back in the summer, I think it was. No, it was because it was before COVID. It was last summer, maybe. I think I remember Kevin O'Neill saying that no matter what happens, that lot next to the town hall should be purchased for municipal purposes. It's surrounded by town buildings, and it's something that the town, in the future, you can't survive with the town hall and the senior center you have now. So one way or the other in the future, and costs keep going up, you're gonna have to do something. But the main answer right now, obviously, is that if the sellers are willing to sign based on a contingency that the projects be approved, that answers all those questions.
Mr. Chairman?
Zach?
Just to follow up to that, Mike, so twofold. In the fall town meeting coming up, you're gonna ask the townspeople to borrow, $2 million, rough and dirty, whatever the final negotiated price is. And you say, well, we may buy it and we may not. Well, I think you need clarity to the people of Norton. Either we're gonna give you $2 million, either you're gonna buy it or you're not gonna buy it. If not, why don't you just go to the property owners now and say, hey, give me a 1-year lease, I'll give you $1,000 a month, with the option to buy at any point in that time. Worst case to worst, we don't buy it, you get $12,000 for your efforts. That's the first phase. The second phase, I agree with everything you said on the Town Hall and Senior Center, that they're beyond repair. But assume, for this argument, the townspeople say, no, we can't afford it. What is Plan B?
Plan B is to live the way we're living right now. There's nothing that can be done. And Mr. Chairman, as far as, I'm trying to remember, Zach, what your other question was. Oh, the town meeting isn't buying the property. The town meeting is authorizing the selectmen to negotiate to buy the property. So it just allows, that's the only process. And I don't want to start just giving people money to hold land either. You know, we just don't want to throw money down the drain that way.
And Mike, when they found the issues with the town hall, I know I don't think we've fixed what was required. You know, if it does come back again and they shut the town hall down completely, you know, where are we then? Are we talking trailers? Are we talking everyone from home?
It would be talking about a combination of working from home and trailers.
Okay. Not the best look, but okay. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Rick?
Mike, just going back a little bit, I remember both these projects are prevailing wage projects. And have we figured out, I know there's the Boston market and then there's Southeastern Mass. And are we in that Southeastern Mass district for prevailing wage, or are we still looking at Boston numbers?
I don't remember what the architect's answer to that was, Dynamite, but I do not.
We thank heavens are in Southeastern Mass.
Okay,
So we are not in the Boston prevailing wage.
okay.
That's correct information that I have.
I do remember when those numbers were spread out at the last project. I think some of them were tied to the Boston wage market.
My understanding from talking with Mike Riveros is that we are Southeastern Mass, so
Okay,
much better.
yep, much better.
And Dinah, during one of the meetings over the summer, there was a question regarding the zoning, and I don't know if it was one of these two parcels or a different parcel. Was that right?
It was a different parcel.
It was, okay. So-
It was the parcel on Reservoir Street that was the zoning concern.
Okay. And with our maps and everything that we have, we've confirmed the zoning is appropriate for what we're projecting for these two
With
parcels.
what we have, yes, it is.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Dinah or Mike?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Paul.
Will there be money appropriated for necessary repairs that have to happen to Town Hall or Senior Center from now until these new buildings may get built 3 years from now? How is the town going to afford to do the repairs to just live in the buildings for the next few years?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Mike.
If these projects are not voted on, that's something that we'd have to look at. You know, we're not going to do anything major on that building because we can't. So any repairs would be continuous minor repairs.
Would that wait till Springtown meeting?
Yes.
Can the senior center wait that long, Mike? I keep hearing that there was holes and gaps and all kinds of stuff from the, on that building. I mean, it's the last thing I'd want to see is anything happen there where the seniors can't meet at all. And then where would we be?
Yeah, the building, you know, will suit the purpose it's doing right now. It's not adequate, way too small, but safety-wise, you know, it should be okay. The building commissioner keeps an eye on it, and if any major concern comes up, then we'd have to address it, and it may have to be closed.
And what would the interim step be? If any, if the building got closed?
We haven't talked about that, so I'd just be speculating that if the building had to be closed. The COA director and the outreach counselor would have to work remotely and address all the concerns that way. And as far as any activities, we'd have to look and see if there was any room in the schools or somewhere else that they could hold those activities.
Because I think we got from the building commissioner, I think it was almost a year ago now, where that building was close to being condemned. Here we are a year later, and this conversation may drag out for another year, and between building and everything else. Best case scenario, we're probably talking about 3 years.
Right. And that's another issue that, with the economy. I know Marshfield is building a new police station, and they just broke ground, and it will not be occupied to the spring of 2022. So if these projects are approved, it's going to be 2 to 3 years before we're seeing occupancy, and hopefully the economy has turned around by then for all the residents.
Okay.
Just to follow up, I think, if I remember correctly, a few years ago, the town of Berkeley nearby had building issues and closings where they had to work out of trailers, and there was a lot of logistics and so forth. But I know it'd be interesting to see what type of costs that they had to go through and what type of pains they went through before they got back up in their own building. If there's any history or just kind of an analysis that, what's involved with trailers, off-site, the downside.
Excuse me. Did you say that was Berkeley, Rick?
It was Berkeley, yeah. This goes back a few years. They were working out of trailers for at least 2 or 3 years.
Thank you.
And I found out that it took place somewhere in 2012, 2013.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, who's it? Is it Bill?
this is Bill.
Bill, go ahead.
So here's a off the cuff question. At least when it comes to, say, the senior center, why do we have to own it versus renting at the Great Woods Plaza? Because if you think a supermarket's going to replace Roach Brothers, it probably won't happen. So why wouldn't we rent this spot for minor renovations and just move it there at a cost I'm going to really guess is way less than the debt service for the next 30 years on a senior center? Did we consider that?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, that wasn't something that the building committee looked at. We did look at purchase and construction of municipal buildings. I can speak from previous experience, having run a branch library in a rented space in a strip mall in Manamet, which is a section of Plymouth. Rents continue to go up, and we had a very, very good relationship with our landlord, but once we were ensconced there and had been there for several years, we were basically in the position of having to continually go back to town meeting for an increase in the rent every other year, which did drive us to eventually build a branch library because it was cheaper in the long run than paying an ever-increasing rent. which was, and as I said, we had a very good relationship. But rents do go up, and once you get there, it's very hard to leave.
Right, but if you enter into a lease, then you either know what the rent is going to increase every year, or it's going to be steady for a chunk of time, say 5 years, then it goes up for the next 5 years, then it goes up. So it's something that you could, build in. It's not insurmountable to do. I mean, if you're on a tenant at will type basis, then yeah, you're at the mercy of the landlord. But if you're in a lease, not so much.
If you're in a lease, then it becomes part of your annual operating budget.
Oh, I understand that.
Which is an entirely different animal, and I don't think the town is in the position to look at increasing one department's operating budget by what would be a reasonable lease payment, for a landlord. So it's not something that, I as a department head would want to have to go back at, I don't know what the Norton's length of a lease is. I'm familiar with a 3-year municipal lease at a maximum. And to go back every 3 years and have to ask for an increase in your operating budget due to an increased rent, which then decreases the money you have to spend on programs and services, you really do get in a catch-22 with it. That's just my personal opinion.
I understand that, but personally, I think it's no different than having to go back for the debt exclusion. One way or the other, you're going to need, an override or an exclusion to afford this. But again, we haven't compared what the cost of leasing an already existing facility with plenty of parking, plenty of lighting, all on one floor, versus building it anew.
Do we have any idea how much that would cost on an annual basis?
Mr. Chairman? We don't, you're on mute, by the way, Mr. Chairman. We don't have an idea, because as Dinah said, we haven't looked at it, but obviously the rent was too high for Roach Brothers because they're not there now. So a going business, a going concern couldn't afford to be there.
Mr. Chairman, all I'll say to that is, talking to the management of Roach Brothers, they couldn't make it because they really didn't have customers. You could pass that place all day long, any day of the week, and it was pretty desolate. That's why they're not there any longer. They couldn't make it because they didn't have the customers.
And Mike or Dinah, do you know why the charge didn't include the criteria of renting, leasing, when the permanent building committee was established and given the direction they would go, why it was purchase only?
To be honest with you, I can't answer that. That predates my time on the building committee.
Mike, do you have any idea?
It's just not something that municipalities do. I mean, it's just obviously if it was something that was cost effective, you'd see communities leasing, but where, communities are something that's going to be here for decades to come. And as Dinah said, if you can entertain a lease, but it's going to keep going up, and then by the time you realize that it's not cost effective, then you end up going out and constructing something that's going to cost you a lot more than it would originally.
Wasn't this selection on Mansfield Ave? It's part of the building's appeal is that it has an outdoor factor to it, right? I mean, isn't it that you can have the seniors or whomever is there to do more than just being in a building? And I would think that's part of why you selected that. I don't
That's exactly right. The beauty of that site is, and I don't know if Beth is on tonight, but I know Beth was excited about it, looking at different activities, outdoor activities they can have for the seniors there, including using the reservoir.
And also, you know,
Ashland,
if I might, the passive recreation aspect of it also appeals to the recreation department, which then opens up grants and other avenues for purchasing and funding, hopefully.
Mr. Chairman,
Michael?
just to echo what Dinah's saying, I know Jennifer Carlino did look at the site last week and was excited about the potential to receive grant money to help defray the cost of the purchase also.
I'll just add that, you know, the town of Ashland has a fairly new Council of Aging building, senior center, and it sits adjacent to walking trails, state park, ball fields. So it's a very open area, open land, and actually I think the recreation department is in the building as well. So there's some synergy for the use of the building. Just not by one, you know, staying indoors, or there's a lot that is part of that complex.
Thanks, Rick. Does anyone on the committee or anyone else in attendance have any questions for Dinah at this point on the acquisition of those 2 pieces of property? Or the article itself? All right, hearing none, I think we might as well go to the next about establishing a fund, Mike.
Yeah, the second article, if the first article passes, the second article would be to set aside out of funds that exist. I gave you a list. There's $110,000 that exists in 2 articles that were appropriated previously for the building committee's use that it hasn't been used. And so this article would repurpose funds from that article to appropriate $81,500, I believe it is, to go to the architect so that the architect can have the definitive costs for construction on the 2 sites to move forward on the projects. And Dinah could speak more on that if she...
I'm sorry, I forget to unmute. There is money remaining in the building committee's, you know, funds that could be repurposed. It seems to be a logical way to go in my mind. We would be contracting with the architect to do a more detailed rendering and run up to town meeting with preliminary designs on those 2 pieces of property. We would be hopefully using the same building footprint since the town already owns those. We would just be changing the land. That would reduce the amount that would need to be borrowed from the, you know, for the property. And then if you would look farther, you know, afield, the original appropriation that came down in 2017 to start this project still has a balance remaining in that fund, which could be used to offset the purchase of these 2 pieces of property. So we would be in good shape to hold, you know, money to get ready for a run up to April or May, you know, the annual town meeting, but still have a wherewithal to repurpose already appropriated funds towards the purchase of land.
And the architect's cost is $81,150.
Right. Mr. Chairman?
I think there was Zach. Go ahead, Zach.
Can I ask how much money has been spent on this project to date, from its conception to where we are today?
Mike?
I am not sure. I don't have that with me. I can get that for you and email it to you all.
Does anyone have any questions on establishing a fund? Okay, hear none. And Mike, who would be the authorizing body of it? Just the permanent building committee? They would be able to move the funds from that account? Or would it be board or select board?
No, that would be a vote of the town meeting to repurpose those funds from that article, the previous article, to be used for this purpose.
Right, now that's establishing the original balance, right? But then when funds actually get spent for the architect, is that the only purpose it can be used for? Is the feasibility?
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. And the building committee would sign off on all the invoices.
That would come under our management.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have questions on that? All right, hearing none. Dinah, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mike, I'm not sure what else you thought we'd get through for tonight, but
That's it really for tonight. Just those two articles.
okay. Does it make sense to try and do something else as far as, well, we don't have a lot of information, so.
Right. On Wednesday night, I'll give a financial update, and then hopefully you can vote on some of the articles starting on Wednesday night from that. I did meet with the superintendent today to go over his needs, and so we can talk about that on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you. And then last week's minutes, Mike, has anyone had a chance to review those or type those up for us?
Not yet. Not that fast.
And I don't know, anyone on the committee, any of the outstanding minutes, do we have any to review right now, or are we good?
No, Steve, I haven't written up the very lengthy June 27th ones yet.
Okay.
And that's, again, the July meeting, you were going to hand off to the town hall to write up.
Yep.
And then the other, we approved the other 4 for May and June. At that July meeting, I've yet to look up the date to pass those minutes in.
Okay.
But we should be up to date otherwise.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill. Well, if we see we have nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further conversation? Hearing none, I'll go to the vote. Bill?
Yes?
Zach?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Yes.
And I also say yes. So we'll be meeting Wednesday night, 6:30. So thank you guys very much. Have a great night, and meeting is adjourned.